Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, JR, and our beloved conference, the Big Ten, the one that's given us epic rivalries, underdog stories, and those nail-biting fourth quarter comebacks we love. It's now flirting with private equity in a deal that could pump $2 billion into its veins. Now, that might seem like winning the lottery, right? Sounds like a jackpot. Wrong. This is so wrong. This is not right. I'm going to tell you exactly why in this video. This private equity nightmare could poison the whole sport, could poison this conference, and honestly, with the way things are going right now, it could be detrimental for all of college football, turning college football into just one more corporate cash grab for the suits and everybody else. We're going to break it all down, the latest on this so-called deal, what private equity means, and in this twisted context, and why it's a ticking time bomb for the Big Ten and everything we love about this game. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you. I'm not going to lie to you. If this happens, it would really, really suck, and I'm not sure college sports, specifically football, would ever be the same again. I've always said change is inevitable and that we can't deny it. We just have to make the best out of it. But this change, this one right here, this change would kill a lot of the sport that we loved most. Not just wound it, but kill it dead. First, let's set the stage, because if you're not neck deep in the financial weeds of college athletics, if you don't know what's going on, this feels like a bit of a fever dream, right? Schools are desperate right now for money. They have skyrocketing costs with everything on facilities, coaching staffs, you name it. It's an arms race right now. And at the top of that, the NCAA's recent settlement in those antitrust lawsuits means direct revenue sharing with the athletes. That's right. Players are finally getting the piece of the pie, you know this, which is great for them, but it is squeezing the athletic departments, and they're trying to find new avenues of revenue, essentially, like a vice. This entire thing is kind of choking them out because there's really no limit. And currently, it looks like, after a report from Front Office Sports, the revenue sharing cap is just starting to be ignored by collectives. We'll see. Another report came out by Dan Murphy at ESPN today. I believe we'll see what the future kind of holds. This is still unraveling, but all of this would hurt the mid and lower revenue schools in the Big Ten. Think about it. Places like Rutgers or Illinois aren't raking in the type of cash that Ohio State is with their kind of fandom and stuff. I mean, those obviously have good fans. I mean, I'm not disparaging either of those teams' fans, but Ohio State is on another level with the TV deals and their boosters. They're scraping. Those teams are kind of not those teams in particular, but some teams are kind of scraping by, and this pressure is forcing desperate moves. But injecting private equity is not a lifeline. It's a noose disguised as the safety rope that you can just grab. You see, there are credible reports from places like CBS, ESPN, On3, Front Office Sports, and more that say the Big Ten is deep in talks with private capital firms and about a massive infusion of at least $2 billion straight into the league in its 18 partner schools. Yeah, you heard that right. $2 billion. But here's the catch, and there are always a lot of catches, right? This comes bundled with a 10-year extension of the league's grant of rights, locking everyone in until 2046. For the uninitiated, a grant of rights is basically a pinky swear on steroids. Schools hand over their media and broadcasting rights to the conference for a set period, promising not to bolt for greener pastures, kind of like the ACC did years ago. Ask them how they feel about how that's going, and you can figure out if this would go well or not. Secret, it's not going well. It is severely limiting the bigger programs from competing with the best of the best in college football, and extending it into 2046 for the Big Ten would be like signing a 30-year mortgage on your soul. Stability on paper, but it handcuffs schools from negotiating better deals down the line. And in this era of conference realignment chaos and everything else, where Notre Dame's flirting and the Pac-12 is a ghost town. I mean, they're bringing in some teams now, but it's a ghost town of a Power 4 conference. That might sound reassuring, but trust me, It's a prison. It's not a resort. Some have suggested schools should just use their endowment to help pay the offset prices of the private equity and what they want to try to make. But university endowments don't work like that. They are like giant savings accounts for the colleges, huge piles of donated money invested to grow over time, often worth billions. That spits out a steady income each year of around 4 to 5% of their value without touching the main stash at all. In the Big Ten's potential $2 billion private equity deal, where investors would grab a slice of the profit from the TV deals and sponsorships, schools could theoretically use their endowment cash to cover rising athletic costs like player payments or facilities, coaching staffs, and easing the pressure to hand over big chunks to the investors. It's an indirect way to fight back, keeping more money in line and reducing the profit tax on the conference revenue. But this is far from a magic fix. This is far from what the schools are actually going to do. Most endowment funds are locked for specific uses like scholarships. Like I said, they're making money off the investment of these. This is not for corporate battles, and schools are weary of draining them too fast, since there's also support for classrooms and research as well. The athletic department and football in particular is a great piece for these schools, but there is so much more that these endowments help support. You can't just use it to help the football team. Wealthier Big Ten spots like Michigan might dip into theirs for a bit, maybe. I mean, they have a really, really high one, but overall, it's more of a temporary Band-Aid than a full shield against the deal's risk. These discussions aren't some spur-of-the-moment brainstorm. They've been simmering for months, with the league shopping ideas to multiple different firms. 3 different private equity players are in the mix, according to those reports right now. Back in January, folks at Sportico caught wind of it, and by May, Big Ten admins were sitting through in-person pitches from 4 firms at spring meetings. Commissioner Tony Petitti has been going all out at this ever since the spring, but as of today, no votes have been taken and nothing's locked in. A decision could come in weeks, they say, but don't hold your breath. This is far from a slam dunk from everything I know and from what I've heard. But things like this can change so fast, you never know. So how would this money machine actually work? The plan is to spin off a shiny new entity called Big Ten Enterprises. Right? I mean, make it sound super nice and fancy. A whole separate company just to hoard all the revenue streams, the media rights, the scholarships, the ticket sales, the works, all that stuff. The private investor would pony up the billions up front, split unevenly, right? Unevenly, we've talked about this for a while, among schools in different tiers. Bigger brands like Ohio State and Michigan, they would get the lion's share, while little guys get essentially the table scraps, right? In return, the investor snags a small equity stake, 1 out of the 20 total shares, split between the 18 schools, the league office and them. They get repaid through annual distributions proportional to their slice, like dividends from a stock you wish that you'd never bought. They swear up and down, it's hands off. No border seats, no say in scheduling, officiating. We're not going to change your championships. Don't worry. Conference traditionalists, we want this to stay pure, right? We want this to be that way, but it seems like it's far from doing that. One league source told one of the reports that not selling a piece of the conference, like they're not going to sell a piece of the conference. But come on, I mean this is all just PR bullcrap. We know this is how business is. This is how private equity works. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. But then once we have all the money, we can basically do whatever we want. It's exactly that. Carving out the profitable guts of the Big Ten and handing them to outsiders while squeezing every last drop for profit. And then the tiered payouts, it won't work. Ohio State and Northwestern, it never worked for them to get the same amount of payouts. That was never sustainable. Sure, okay, we've talked about this, but this just codifies the inequality. The big dogs eat steak, the pups get kibble. It's like dividing a pizza where the blue chip prospects get 3 slices and the walk-ons just get the uneaten crust. In a sport where we finally have parity and things are more interesting for more teams for a longer period of time now than it has been for a while, this is absolute poison. As you would expect, though, the heavyweights are digging their heels in, and as they should. Like I said, it's not. It doesn't make any sense for Ohio State and Northwestern to make the same amount of money. Ohio State and Michigan, the rivalry defines college football in many ways. Actually, has them teaming up right now for a holdout, and for good reason. You know it's bad if a Michigan regent is calling for Ohio State to team up with them. You see, these juggernauts are holding out on the private equity deal because they're tired of footing the bill for the rest of the league. And check on FanDuel odds. I mean, you can see this from the odds themselves. The Buckeyes are currently minus 4,000 odds to win against Minnesota this weekend. And Minnesota's not even like a terrible program. It's not like they're Northwestern or anything. That's just how much they're favored by. And then the Wolverines sit at minus 1,100 over Wisconsin. Wisconsin used to be a really respectable program. I mean, these are both absolute locks that rake in the bets, yet private equity wants them subsidizing the underdogs. It's like forcing the for sure favorites to the spot everyone's points and pick up the tab. Sources have been telling these reporters that they're weary of carrying the load of everyone else, and who can blame them? The Michigan regent, he actually came out and straight up called it a betrayal of public university responsibilities, selling off assets that belong to students and taxpayers, not the fat cat investors. If these two don't sign off, the whole thing will crumble. And honestly, good riddance. This deal's unanimous or bust vibe just underscores how fragile and forced it feels. Now, as you can tell, I'm against this, but you might be wondering, what is so wrong with private equity itself? Because understanding this beast is a key to seeing why it's a wolf in sheep's clothing for college sports. You might say, well, yeah, we should give these teams more money and this team's more money, but it always sounds better at the beginning than it is at the end. At its core, private equity is Wall Street's favorite game. Deep-pocketed firms have Blackstone or Apollo spot a business with untapped potential. They inject cash for growth and then milk its returns for the next 5 to 10 years before flipping it for a fat profit. It's like those flippers on HGTV. I know you've seen those right there. Hey, you get the house, they jack up the rent and bail. All there, except here, the house is your Saturday traditions and everything you love about Saturdays from noon to 11 o'clock at night, sometimes longer now with the Big Ten, right? In simple terms, it's Shark Tank on steroids. But a team with odds to make the playoffs right now on FanDuel, like Penn State, who sits at minus 160, doesn't get to deal with the Sharks. In fact, a team like UCLA, who hasn't won a game all year, has the worst odds on FanDuel in college football to win 2+ games. Their odds currently sit at plus 210. That team has the same amount of say right now as Penn State. That's insane. That is just insane to think about. This is all Tony Petitti is trying to get what he wants. Essentially, investors give you money to scale up, but they own a chunk and expect juicy payouts. For the Big Ten, it's a full takeover, but partnering on the commercial side means handing over the keys to what makes the league tick. Those billion-dollar TV deals with Fox, the jersey patches from corporate sponsors, the naming rights on stadiums, right? Fox loves this. By the way, they'd extend their football rights lock to 2046, turning the Big Ten into their own personal ATM. We talk about how college football is becoming like the NFL. This would literally be them making their own little mini NFL model, where the conference balloons to $2 billion in annual revenue. This might just sound ambitious, but it's actually predatory, because private equity doesn't care about rivalries, transitions, or anything about the game that you love. It cares about earnings over everything else. But why now? Why is the Big Ten doing this? you can blame the perfect storm and the terrible media that honestly hate the Big Ten. And I just being honest with you, like there's a reason why the Big Ten is looking like the scapegoat like this for the media right now, because most of the media will focus on the Big Ten but fail to mention that the Big 12 flirted with this mess last year. That was reported a little bit, but not as big of a story. And the SEC is interested too. So much so that they're actually paying consultants to look into this, right? You haven't heard that put out there a whole lot, but it's happening and it has been reported. Unequal revenues have been a talking point on this channel since we began. We told you about Pat Chun, the Washington athletic director, what he said, and gave you the info about Ohio State's president, Ted Carter, who wants a bigger slice of the revenue right now. While there is no way to avoid the death of unequal payouts, because it's ridiculous that a school like Ohio State is making this just as much money as Northwestern, this is not the answer. This is not what you go to. Private equity whispers, we'll fix this, it's okay, but it's not. This is a Trojan horse. This fix is an immediate boost that will eventually drown the conference in its future. And you know who is going to have to save them, right? Who's the programs with the most money that's going to have to save them? It's the big programs. It's the big dogs. Those that make the most money. Ohio State, Michigan, USC, like the ones that make the most money. What happens in year 11 of that investor's payout when revenue dips? They push for cuts, fewer non-conference games, more exploitive NIL deals, or worse, selling top talent in order to pay off the investors. This would be catastrophic. If there is any positive here, the only possible positive here is that it would kill the Super League dreams by cementing the Big Ten, and would probably cement other conferences because they would probably go with the private equity as well. But more cash up front could patch loopholes, or it could patch holes right now. It could build NIL collectives and keep coaches from jumping ship. But the downside, I mean, it's an avalanche. First, the control creep, even without board seats now, that equity stake gives leverage. Investors hate losing in the lobby for efficiencies like regionalizing rivalries to cut travel. You're not going to get USC and Notre Dame. You're going to get a forced rivalry of, like I can't even think of one. Purdue and Michigan State, right? Or jacking ad clutter during games. Second, it supercharges inequality. Tiered teams mean that they have pull further ahead, turning the Big Ten into a two-class system. Elite overlords and welfare cases, upsets, forget them. Smaller schools won't be able to compete without equal shots. Third, in this guts fans, right? College football's magic in its chaos. The underdog spoiler makers, remember them when they toppled the Buckeyes, the pageantry of the game, and being able to go back to packed alumni sections. Private equity, it turns all of that into quarterly reports. Public universities like Nebraska and Wisconsin aren't corporations. They're stewards of tradition, funded by taxpayers and tuition. Handing over the reins to profit hounds betrays that. It's selling the farm to pay the bills. And once it's gone, good luck buying back the heart. We've seen it in pro sports. Endless strikes, fans revolt, diluted product, and if the Big Ten falls, the dominoes topple, because right now, behind the scenes, the Big Ten is leading this sport. Greg Sankey might be out there using his nice media packs for the Tuscaloosa Times intern, right? But the Big Ten is the most business savvy behind the scenes in leading college football into its next direction. Look, I get the desperation. Athletic directors aren't villains. They're just trying to make money for the universities. I get it. They're drowning in a system when the NCAA completely botched it. If we were looking for an evil villain in all of this, it's the NCAA, because they screwed all of this up from the very beginning. But this isn't salvation. It's surrender. Ohio State and Michigan's resistance should be supported by every single college football fan. You might say, oh, well, you're going to get the biggest tier, the biggest money, but they're eventually going to have to be the ones that pay for this conference to get out of this terrible deal. If they kill it, honestly, it saves us all. Private equity might fatten wallets short term, but long term, it hollows out the game, leaving a soulless machine where wins are just line items and fans are just data points. That's the Big Ten's private equity flirtation in all of its ugly glory. A $2 billion temptation that could doom the conference to corporate irrelevance and fracture the sport that we so adore. It's not too late. Pressure your ADs, tweet at the commissioner, rally the fan base. This deal dies if we make enough noise. But what do you think? What do you think about it all? Is private equity the devil's bargain, or am I overreacting? Let me know in the comments. Smart move, total disaster. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Hit that like button if you're team heck no with me. Subscribe for more takes on the Big Ten chaos. And there's a hype button down there you can use now. Go ahead and use that hype button as well. It really helps out the show. If you're listening on podcast, give us a 5-star rating and review. We do this for you guys, and if you like the kind of content you're getting, do that. If not, just email me, jrsrankings@gmail.com, and let me know what the show can do better to cover the Big Ten for you. So don't miss Sunday night. We'll have our full recap of Week 6. Saturday night after the last game, we'll go live with our power rankings, and then of course you'll get content all week long. Until then, keep the faith in the real game, the one that's played for pride, not profits. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.